did think that would be the case. Peter said she might be able to not be able to get out because of the weight.
Good afternoon. I'm Dominic Ponsford, editor of PressGazette, and welcome to the first webinar in our Future of Media Technology series for 2022, which tackles one of the big themes of the year for all online publishers, first-party data. Whether you have a subscription model, ad-funded, or both, having a future-proof first-party data strategy is essential. Over the next hour, or probably a bit less, I'd say probably about 40 minutes, we are going to find out what is first-party data, why do we need it, and what do we need to know about the actions of sort of tech giants and regulators in this sphere, which mean this is something we need to be particularly concerned about right now if we're a publisher. So I'd like to welcome everyone who's watching this on demand, and to help us answer these questions and more, we've got four superb experts on our panel. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. I'm going to introduce them all in turn and ask them to say a quick hello and tell us a little more about themselves, their business and their area of expertise. First up, we have Robin Ray, who is the VP of Marketing at Industry Dive, which are one of my favorite companies. They're a B2B publishing success story, grown from zero to approaching $100 million turnover, I understand, in the space of just a decade. And they operate in 22 business verticals. They don't have paywalls, so they're mainly ad funded. And it'd be great to get a B2B perspective on the topic from you. So hi, Robin.
Hello, Dominic. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us, unless I've covered it all, just tell us a little bit more about Industry Dive and why first-party data is important for you guys.
Absolutely, you covered it. You know, we're one of the fastest growing providers of business journalism, and we reach almost 13 million decision makers across those 22 different industries. So that's a lot of audiences to own, operate, and understand. I've been in the B2B space for over 10 years and really passionate about building, nurturing, and really understanding our audiences, and first-party data is really key to that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Robin. Yeah, and I'm with you on that. PressGazette's very similar. I always think there are some readers who are sort of so valuable to us that we'd almost pay them to read us. So so it's just sort of great to know who they are and build that relationship with them. So next up, we also have Ashdeep Sood, who's a marketing solutions engineer at OneTrust, which among other things provides a privacy management platform for websites. So hi Ashdeep, great to have you. And just, yeah, it'd be great if you could just sort of tell us a little bit more about your expertise in this area.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here with the great panel. I'm Ashdeep Sood. I'm actually a solutions engineer on the OneTrust PreferenceChoice team. We are specializing in consumer-facing product suite that supports consumers to be able to provide you with consent or provide you with choices that align with different regulatory requirements and different technology frameworks. My background is in engineering, and here at OneTrust, I also got my privacy credentials with IAPP. So think of myself as a great mix of not only knowing technology, but also understanding what's the market out there with regulations. So
right, I'm looking forward to learning a lot from you over the next next 40 minutes or so. Brilliant. Next up, we've got Joe Holdaway, who's the Chief Data and Marketing Officer at Independent News and Media. The Independent sort of died in 2016, or people kind of said it did because the print edition closed. But in fact, it went from strength to strength, and it's been a great sort of journalism and financial success story, which I've been delighted to see. I just love the way that great journalism brands continue, and I know that data is incredibly important to you guys. It's now in its fifth year of profit since the print edition closed, but it continues and goes from strength to strength. So, hello, Joe. It'd be great if you could just tell us a little bit about your involvement in this field.
Thanks, Dominic. Hello, everyone. Yes, so I'm Joe Holdaway. I'm the Chief Data and Marketing Officer for The Independent. My remit involves setting and activating the data strategy across The Independent, but also the Evening Standard newspaper and website, analytics and monetization of first-party data. And then because we are diversifying quite heavily commercially, also looking at reader revenues, marketing of subscriptions, and also compliance. So data, privacy, monetization, first-party data strategies, all woven through what I do day to day. And it's incredibly important for us now. We've got global reach, 100 million plus unique visitors a month. And for us, it's all about engagement and data collection.
Brilliant. And our fourth panelist is Rupert Knowles, who's the general manager of Piano, which is a company which describes itself as the digital experience platform. And I know you work with a huge variety of publishers around the world, consumer, B2B specialists. So it'd just be great to hear, insights that you've gleaned from them, Rupert. And just tell us a little bit more, if you wouldn't mind, just about Piano and what your involvement is.
Sure. Thanks, Dominic. Yeah, as you said, we provide not just SaaS software solutions, but also strategic services to a wide range of media organizations across the world. And that includes both consumer media organizations, but also B2B. It includes small niche publishers as well as national media organizations as well, and regional organizations. And we do that sensibly by combining data, insight, and experience management to help publishers drive strategies around driving engagement, driving registrations, or it could be driving subscriptions, or managing churn and trying to put in place retention policies, and really trying to improve those different performance metrics within those companies by understanding the behavior of audiences and building relationships with audiences.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rupert. Well, look, let's start at the beginning. As the Church of England sometimes says, we're all at different points on the journey. And so for bearing in mind that some of us know more about this than others, Ashley, would you sort of set the scene for us a little bit and just tell us a little bit about what we mean by first-party data and why this is a particularly hot topic right now in the light of what people like Google and are doing or planning, and what regulators are planning, we think, in the EU and elsewhere. That's to Ashdeep, sorry.
Sure. So I have seen a lot of changes come through over the past year or two, and three key things that I feel that are driving this initiative is, one, we all are very much aware of the fact that there are expanding regulatory experiences across the board. Started out with GDPR, have CCPA within the US, any new changes coming through with CNIL, ICO there in the EU EMEA region. We have other state level regulations coming in US, and other geographies and countries are also having their own experiences. So it's just becoming so much more important that you understand your data and have valid consent for it. The other change that came along very much in the last year was all the technology frameworks changed. So Google said no third-party cookies will be allowed starting 2023. Apple released iOS 14 updates, which has ATT and IDFA tracking technology consents and opt-ins. So these technology frameworks are also changing, and it's important for us to know the data and get consent for that. And then the last piece was the actual consumer expectations. With the pandemic, we saw that many people have so many more devices, and they're operating on those and have a certain level of expectation from the brands they interact with. I could actually quote one of the McKinsey reports, I think it was called Next in Personalization, reported in 2021, where they talked about how 71% of the consumers actually expect their companies to deliver personalized interactions. And about 76% said that they get frustrated if that doesn't happen. So if you can't profile them using third-party cookies or other technology, you need to find another way to do that. And the best route to actually know who they are and give them what they want is to provide the value exchange and get that first-party data. So I think it is the next up and booming conversation, and marketers are pretty much all in this, as much as I know and have been having conversations on.
So this is publishers themselves making sure they've got a way of finding out who the readers are, tracking what they're reading, and doing that sort of independently of things that are outside your control on Google or other platforms, so that you can then use that information to sell a better advertising solution, or provide a better reader experience and or sell them a subscription. Is that fair? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm on board. So it's a good thing, a very good thing to have first-party data. How do we get the data? That's the question. I think Rupert is a good person to start on this one. So Rupert, what do you think?
Yeah, there's many strategies, and I think those strategies will depend on the type of publication and the sorts of audience they're working with. And I think that a lot of this is around value exchange. So if I want to build a relationship with a customer, if I want them to register or give me some sort of information about themselves, we need to give something in return. And that could be, for example, giving them access to some premium content. It could be signing up for a newsletter, or even a quiz or a competition, for example. There's also abilities to do things like surveys. That might be another way in which we can gather information. There are lots of different strategies for doing that, or it could be an element of personalization. And I think if you make it clear why you're asking for that information, that helps build that stronger relationship. And you can even build things like progressive profiling, where you might ask a simple set of questions in the first instance, and then later actually start augmenting that profile information. And of course, you're also gathering contextual information about those individuals. So I think it's really important to think on a title by title basis, what's that value exchange going to be? What are the reasons? And being very clear to visitors why you're asking them those questions in the first place.
And how do you know that the person? So once you've identified them, the reader, how do you know that the reader is in fact that reader? Is it good to get them to register? So you have a sort of registration, or is that not always necessary? Can you sort of track them in other clever ways, sneaky ways?
There's all sorts of, I mean, it's not our field, but there's all sorts of ad tech companies that will claim they can track people in all sorts of clever ways, but those ways are constantly being thwarted by the likes of Apple and other companies as well. So I think that, being honest and direct and actually having things like registrations and asking people to log in and having known users is probably the better way to go than using sort of underhand techniques. But once you have got that user logging and you're providing an element of value, then obviously you can understand their behavior. And when you have a large enough cohort of users, you can do things like lookalike modeling as well. So I know, given this cohort of known users, their behavior, and there may be a set of anonymous users that I don't know, but I can make guesses based on the people that I do know and what the behavior looks like as well. So you can start building on that group of known users and make inference about other users as well.
Okay, cool. That's really useful. So Joe, I'll bring you in here. So, I mean, you must have millions of, maybe you'll tell me the number, how many millions of first registered known users registered users you have at the Independent. But I know at the Independent you can read stuff for free now, can't you? You don't necessarily need to give your details, but it feels like you're making it, you're being a kind of like, we'd really like you to tell us who you are. But it'd be great to sort of just get some insight into what you found worked, what your approach is now, and how you're gathering that data and what you're doing with it. Big question.
Sure. Yeah, of course. I mean, we had to pivot quite aggressively, really, in 2021 because of looking forwards to the deprecation of third-party cookies. How are we going to monetize our data? What do we think the advertising landscape is going to look like post that deadline? And we have a lot of users who love Apple devices, and they are already sort of invisible in the programmatic landscape. So we had to pivot quite rapidly and really push for registrations. And we gave ourselves a goal of 2 million within 12 months. So 2 million new registered users within 12 months. And also don't forget, we have to keep that registered user database clean. So they have to be active. There's no point collecting the data for the sake of it. So we have moved from collecting around 20,000 a month to 200,000 a month. And the trust in the quality brand, and it's the same for a lot of premium publishers, or all premium publishers, it's about the trust. So a lot of that growth was driven through voluntary registration gating. So yes, it's a free to access site in the main. We have a small proportion of content that is behind a paywall, but a very small proportion. But what we've asked our readers to do is voluntarily register in order to access the content. And that has driven over 40% of our new registration base, which is phenomenal for us. And there are all sorts of responsibilities that come along with that trust, which, you know, as a responsible organisation, you have to make sure that you store people's data correctly, that you get consent where you should, and that they understand what you're going to use their data for. But we also have supplemented that with lead generation. We have employed a communities editor, which has really accelerated not only the activation of our registration strategy, but also the newsroom participation. And we've moved to nearly 30 newsletters from less than half that 12 months ago. And this person, she's been instrumental in making sure that our registration strategy is proving to be an ongoing success. So we have the newsletters as a value exchange. We also have events. We have a really good commenting platform. You need to register to enter competitions. So we've had a whole series of value exchanges, as well as access to premium content, which is gated in a month. If you register, you can read some of our premium content. And altogether, we're well on track to reaching nearly 4 million registered users by the end of September, which is fantastic for us. And it's been underpinned really because we still generate most of our revenues through advertising. 60% of our revenues are advertising driven, but we have diversified our commercial strategy. So we want to make sure that we can keep growing our registered user base, but we do that through segmentation so that we can complement ad revenue generation. So, you know, we use our CRM strategy to onboard people, to keep them engaged, to retain them. And then we also use a model that we have devised within the data team called APV, where we message people through prompts on the site, depending on their status and their engagement status and how much premium content they have read and how recently. So we make sure we message people with the right message at the right time, so we don't blanket message everybody with the same prompts. So those who we know that are on the cusp of converting to registered users, because we track their behavior on the site, we give them newsletter prompt, for example, or those who are already registered, we ask them to register for more newsletters or to subscribe. So by using a segmentation strategy, we can just make sure that we can complement and balance ad revenue with reader revenues, and try and get a tailored approach to what we want our readers to do.
So that 4 million figure, that's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, that's what the Sun was selling in its kind of heyday in the 80s, and then they didn't even know who they were, but you actually know who they are. It's extraordinary, isn't it, when you consider the Independent, when it went in print, it was selling, I don't quite remember, less than 100,000 copies a day, something like that. So yeah, but you're, and maybe it's not a decision for you, but your instinct that it's not the right thing to do to say, well, to read anything really, you've got to register, you've got to give us something back. You feel that's not the way to go just yet?
Not just yet. I think it's respectful to our reader base to give them the choice. We do message them with a registration gate when they come onto the site each day, but we feel it's their choice. But what has blown me away is the amount of goodwill and the trust in our brand. So, okay, we can see a value exchange here. We like the journalism. I've got extra benefits for registering, but in the main, I'll register because you've asked me to. And I know that's the way, you know, the whole industry is going. And to me, that's hugely positive, particularly if you look at the landscape post 2023 and how publishers are going to be making their money. I think to maintain that trust in the reader base and for them to acknowledge that perhaps they are going to have to give you something in return for this news, because newsrooms are very expensive to run, is only a positive thing. Yeah.
That's good, isn't it? Trust. Trust can only be a good thing for publishers. I think you're right. Okay, that's great. So I'm going to come to Robin next. Hi, Robin. So I mean, it would be great to get a B2B take on this, because I know with B2B, you've not got 4 million readers. You probably wouldn't. Maybe you have. I don't know, but you probably in some of your markets, you've probably just got a few thousand, but who are incredibly valuable because they're individually probably, controlling multi-million pound budgets and making massive purchasing decisions. So I know in B2B there was a move really away into subscriptions, And I know you guys have gone the other way, ad funded with great success. So can you just tell us a little bit more with your B2B hat on how important first party data is to you guys, how you get it, and what you kind of do with it once you've got it?
Sure. First party data is incredibly important to our business. It's what we were built on. We now offer, I think it's 53 business centric newsletters. They are free to our readers. And so our revenue is almost 100% advertising based. We collect demographic and firmographic information from our readers when they sign up for those free newsletters. And that allows us to ensure to our advertisers they're reaching the right users in the right audiences. But we also really value that information, to actually create better content. We're a targeted publication. We write for niche audiences, so it's really necessary for us to know and that we're reaching that niche. Our editorial team has reports that cut through the noise of analytics, and they can really see which stories resonate with those targeted, decision makers in the different industries. We also turn our first party data into insights that can then power content strategies for our marketing partners. So, if they want to know what topics are trending with CIOs in the supply chain, when did CFOs first start, tuning into COVID related stories, anything like that, we're smarter on that, frankly, than programmatic can for some of the brands that are really trying to reach those decision makers that, as you said, they manage, lots of budget. So it's been going really well. Obviously, you said we're on pace to break 100 million in revenue this year. So I'd say it's working.
Pretty impressive. Hats off to you. So how do you go about getting that data? Do you ask people to register to read the website, or is it something or they register to get the emails, or how does it work?
Register to get the emails. So you can access our news and journalism for free on the site. We're serving information and messages from our sponsors alongside that content, but we really ask those to want to get the news into their inbox. That have that direct path to the daily news to register providing, and it's all optional, but providing extra information about their job roles, their company, where they're located. But all of that's really information that we're actually using. I think that's one big thing, is to not over collect demographic and information that you're not going to put to use. But it's information about their roles that's going to help us create that next piece of content that's really relevant.
And then once they've, and forgive me if I'm getting too techie here, this might not be, I don't know how techie you are, I'm not very techie, but if the once they've registered for that email, can you then have a good idea about who they are when they land on the site and read articles and things?
Absolutely. That interaction between their email and then returning to our sites makes them a known user. And then we can over time build that cohort that you can start to, really pull out the trends, like I said, of what CIOs in a certain industry are interested in, but also those, who are likely to convert into reading more of our publications and might be interested in more of our niche, topic specific type of publications.
Cool. Okay. Thanks for that. I mean, and just out of interest, and I'd be interested to hear from Joe on this as well. I mean, what do you have particular technology which you use? Do you have like a third party person you use, or do you have your own thing? So Robin, and I'll ask Robin first, and then go to Joe.
Sure thing. Yeah, we do utilize a customer data platform, or CDP, to help us connect that interaction between email to our sites and kind of cut through that overall analytics and what stories are resonating, actually getting at who that story is resonating with.
Customer data, CDP, part of your tech stack. Got you. What? Yeah. Yes. Sorry. What about you, Joe? What do you use at the Independent?
So we have Permutive as our audience platform. So they were our DMP, and now we use them as our sort of single source of truth for all things customer. But we also, obviously, we use Piano. Thank you, Rupert. And we use them for our subscriptions, but also our messaging and our storage of our reader data. And we use Sailthrough as our email service provider. But we also have built our own sort of data analytics stack. And we do all our data analytics and number crunching in BigQuery. And then we've made sure that everything talks to each other within that stack. So that's where we do our specific site-related analysis. But yeah, so we still use very trusted outsourced partners.
Yeah, easier said than done, I imagine, and fraught with pitfalls with GDPR and so on. I guess you have to be very careful about what you do with all that data and where you put it.
You do have to be really careful. You have to have an audit trail. You have to make sure that you are contracting with partners who know what they're doing, and in the main in this space they do, and they're used to crunching huge, vast amounts of data. So, as long as you're set up as a company with access to a DPO and a privacy first mentality, you should be absolutely fine. It's when you try and build within and not consider the privacy first elements and look into the future of where the market's going to go, that's when it gets pretty complicated. So we definitely rely on the expertise of our partners and then do the sort of the analysis how we want to do it in-house.
Right. And I guess you need to have a little bit of a future facing idea about all this, because you don't want to, in terms of what regulations are coming down the track, so that you're not going to be like a lot of people were when GDPR came in, running around like headless chickens trying to work out how you're going to comply with the latest thing.
You really do. And I think in a newsroom, when everything is very immediate, the immediacy of a digital newsroom is, it's a hugely energetic and focused environment, but it's all, particularly in commercial, you need to make sure you hit your month-end revenues and your quarterly revenues. And you've got someone like me going in and going, no, look, 18 months from now, this is what it's going to look like. We need to start testing and learning and experimenting. And it's like, yeah, Joe, I need to make February's budget. So from a cultural perspective internally, it's a huge job to get a very busy commercial department and newsroom to buy into what you can see 2 years down the line. But unless you start experimenting early, you'll get left behind. And it's always good to be seen as a pioneer and willing to do those beta trials. And I think that's hugely important.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to come back to Ashley now, because I feel like trust is something that we've talked about. I think meaningful consent is something that comes up a lot in this area, and I feel I know what that means, and I feel, but it'd be good for you to expand on that a little bit. I feel like a lot of stuff that goes on online at the moment is you tick something. Do you want to read our terms and conditions? Well, whatever. I'll scroll for ticket. Great. Okay, I've signed my life away, but I've got to whatever, download that app or enter that website. And I imagine that's not going to cut it in the future. But it'd be great if you could just tell us a little bit more about that, why trust is important. Obviously, it's in the title of your thing, and what we mean when we talk about like meaningful consent when it comes to getting people's personal information.
Absolutely. To be fair, I think all these pieces have been sort of called out in different amendments across different regulations that we have seen so far. For your terms of use or terms and conditions use case that you just mentioned, there's actually a part in the regulation that says that your privacy policy and such terms should be very easy to understand and very short. It can be like a 40-page book that somebody has to read and understand. So layering them, having strategies around how you can be very discreet and clear on what is it that you're collecting consent for, how are you going to process that information, and if somebody will have access to it, are three key things that you want to call out whenever you're collecting consent for a certain purpose. So if I'm collecting your consent to sign you up for a newsletter, that should be distinctly called out in that sign up checkbox. And different regulations have their own takes. Like GDPR says it has to be an affirmative action that an end user takes, which is actually checking an unchecked box or filling out a form and saying, yes, please sign me up. That's kind of an action that they give you consent with, versus in the US, we're seeing more of an opt-out trend where it's pre-checked and you can check out. So a meaningful consent, in my opinion, is really defined where the person who is giving you that consent has been provided with full data transparency, going back to, again, what are you collecting? Why do you need it? And what will happen with my data? And then if you're planning to share it with someone, and at the same time, giving them the liberty to decide if they can or cannot do that. So there have been like certain use cases where people have paywalls or registration walls. And in that case, you want to provide the value exchange. So like everybody else has been mentioning in this panel here, that tell them clearly that you have all these free resources, but if you sign up for our newsletters, we will give you the news and the journalistic content that matters to you. You won't be bothered with anything else or having to scroll to 15 different pages or clicks. So it's going to be related to what you want. So it's not just about consent anymore, but also about preferences that you tie into the user's experience and give them that holistic, synchronized interaction with you. And this is going to eventually lead to that trust, because not only do they trust you that you would provide them with personalized information that makes sense to them, but also now in turn they'll trust you with their information, saying, "Hey, I'm going to be moving to California. Can you actually give me the latest trends happening there? Maybe I'm interested in technology. Can you give me latest startups that are working in that area?" So I can trust you with my information and my movements and my data if you actually give me value in exchange for that.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like not being sneaky, being very clear with people what they're getting. Yeah, sort of treating the readers like grown-ups and just saying, look, this is why we need the information. This is what you get in return, and by the way, it helps us to help you. So, yeah,
Agreed.
that all sounds like good advice.
Something to just call out is one thing I've seen some customers think about in this process is, let's just dive into first party data and start collecting whatever we can. That's not the concept we are working with. You don't want to be collecting any PII that may or may not be relevant. When you're thinking about this process, meaningful consent has to be tied to the PII you really need, and you have a quantified and a qualified value behind it. Because when the regulatory bodies come knocking your door, they're not going to be like, "Oh, so you just collected it because you wanted to personalize this in 2025. That doesn't matter. If you are going to personalize it today, show us value of why you need that email address and tell us how it relates to that experience."
Great. Okay, thanks for that. So my sort of limited understanding is that first-party data obviously helps you to tailor the offering a bit better for readers, to try and work out who's going to subscribe and maybe serve them with particular messages, and also to serve your own sort of in-house advertising solutions like a lot more effectively, because you can know who to, I guess, target with the right ads at the right time and so on. But what about programmatic advertising? Because I think that has a bit of a dirty name nowadays, but my understanding is it's worth billions, maybe 100 billion, like globally. It's like a massive business and really important revenue stream. So I'm going to ask Joe this one, because I feel it's in your wheelhouse a bit. How does programmatic advertising fit into all this? Because that's mainly served, isn't it, by third parties, isn't it, by people outside your environment? So how does having a first party data strategy kind of fit into that?
Programmatic is really important to us as a business. So we've got a huge global scale. Around 40% of our revenues from advertising will be programmatic revenues, but that is built on a third party cookie, foundation. So the whole of programmatic, in essence, particularly the OMP, the open marketplace, is built around third party data. So come 2023, that won't be there anymore. If you're already looking at Safari users, they are blind to programmatic ad buys in the OMP. So publisher data will become really important in the programmatic space, because publishers have that relationship with their readers. They can collect the data based on bona fide, really good value exchanges that will provide decent value, and they have the trust, which we've talked about. So what we're trying to do is to move as much business to direct as possible, even programmatic direct, so PMP, PG, buys. We're also looking at a different way of trading. So we are looking at privacy first ways of trading, so data cleanroom technology. So for example, we are trialing with Permutive, so they are doing data cleanroom tech and giving agencies and clients the ability to buy standard cohorts across the web, which is publisher data, but also looking at cleanroom technology. And we're also dealing with InfoSum. And there are a lot of forward.
Joe, I'm gonna have to get you to explain to me the data cleanroom. I have heard it a few times, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. Go on.
All it is so we will collect first-party data. A client would have their own first-party data within their CRM system. So let's think of a motoring client would have a big database of customers. We've got a big database of our readers. And a clean room technology is an agreement with that motoring client. We'll put our data in there, you put your data in there. It will be based on a unique identifier, which is usually an email address. And neither of us can see each other's data. Let's see in a clean room how many matched email addresses we have. And then depending on how many matched email addresses we have, we can then build a segment of those email addresses and serve advertising to them. Or if we don't have enough scale, perhaps we could look at modeling those audiences out to get people who look like them and then serve advertising to them. So it's really good for clients that have their own customer data, and then they you can't get more tailored than that. So by advertising with the independent, having done a clean room email match, that you are targeting and advertising and speaking to your current customers. So that's the clean room technology side, which isn't there yet. There's quite a few clients that are looking at it because it's privacy safe and it's really tailored and focused and targeted, and it's a really great way of using first party data. But we're also looking at other ID technologies out there, and a lot is being talked about contextual. So contextual is coming back. If you're a publisher, you have sold contextual since year dot, i.e. you sell a channel or you sell the context around the audience. But however, if you're an aggregator, I can see that contextual could solve quite a few of your problems. If you're a single publisher, even at the scale we've got, you will not be able to run many contextual campaigns in travel before you run out of inventory. So contextual advertising is part of that toolbox, but it's not the silver bullet to solve everybody's problems. And what I'm finding fascinating is how some ad tech vendors are trying to reimagine their business in a first-party cookie world. And we are taking quite a lot of care in reevaluating our partner sort of portfolio to really investigate what their plans are post third-party cookie deprecation, how they're going to collect the data, what they're going to do with the data. Are they going to do it in a privacy compliant way, or are they thinking of workarounds, so that they can work with first-party data, but in essence, they're still doing what they used to do before. So we're having to be very careful, and the ICO is only getting more and more insistent that people trade by the book, which is a good thing. But publishers have to be very careful about that because they're the data controllers and they're liable.
Yeah, I wonder if when we get out of the now we're sort of the pandemic's kind of officially over, as it were, in the UK. I wonder whether the regulators are going to start focusing on this a bit more and thinking about enforcing a lot of this stuff, whereas maybe we had a bit of a freer hand while we were all just trying to keep our heads above water. I don't know. Cool. Okay. Well, look, we've running a little bit out of time, so I'm going to do just a couple more questions each for everyone, and maybe we'll keep them fairly brief. But I'm just interested, sort of two things to think about, really. Like, one is any examples or anecdotes you've got of things that have worked when it comes to collecting first-party data and doing stuff with it, and maybe once we've done that, maybe I'll just have a final kind of soundbite from everyone in terms of if there's one thing to remember and bear in mind, what might that be? So I'll come back to you first, Robin, over in New Hampshire, coming through loud and clear, which is great, wonders. What have you? What any kind of examples that you guys have got at Industry Dive of things that have worked well when it comes to getting that kind of that vital information you need and building those lists, which I guess are the lifeblood of all your titles?
Sure. Well, as you've said, it's really about the trust with the audience and building that relationship. I mentioned we ask for that information from our subscribers to the newsletters, the free subscribers, but it's optional, and they can provide it as they would like. We do ask later on through welcome series messages later to nudge them and remind them to update their profile, to complete it, to give us just a little bit more information about their job role and the company that they're at. Because again, and we say it in very clear words, it helps us with our journalism. It helps us provide the right type of content for our readers. So being very honest about that. And then also the value exchange. As I said, we have our content, it's ungated on our site, but we also produce news every single day. So it's a lot for you to come back to one of our sites every day and remember to, but you also get value out of our journalists and our reporters, putting together that newsletter in your inbox, and they'll add their own insights as well. So it's the values there to providing your information to us. That's been really key. And I just want to add to what Ashley says, just being very transparent and staying away from the jargon, when you're dealing with users providing their information. When we sent out a notice for the privacy policy updates around GDPR, we actually had people writing back to that email saying, thank you for just talking like a human to us and telling us very clearly why you do what you do. And that was great. They didn't have to hit reply, but it just really, solidified of just being honest. Like you said, treat them like adults. It creates a great brand experience, and they'll remember that and trust you with their information as they move forward.
Great. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, how important emails have become, isn't it? I just it's sort of ancient technology, really, isn't it, by current standards? But it's kind of just become so key, isn't it, to what we all do as publishers now.
So yeah, it's dead, but it's not. Email's not dead.
I know, God, no, it's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, yeah. But I guess it's earning that place in the inbox, isn't it? And earning that sort of trusted sender thing where people will look at your email and not just put it in the spam filter, which I guess all comes down to the quality of what you're producing and making it worth their time. Brilliant. Okay. Yeah. Same question to you, Rupert, really. I mean, any examples you've got of publishers you've worked with, or you think of kind of techniques or things that have worked really well in terms of getting that reader information in?
Sure. I think Tortoise Media is an interesting organization. They're really pushing the envelope in a number of areas, and generating registrations, but also subscriptions through things like their Think-ins, which are small local meetings, virtual on premise, and they're combining these meetings with journalism. And also pushing the envelope a little bit on podcasts as well, and offering both free but also an ad-free version for subscribers as well. So they're really diversifying and looking at different channels. And of course, newsletters continues to be important. And I think the other one I'd point to is what Joe was talking about earlier, this idea of combining data with experiences to be able to nudge customers at different points and be really, really very targeted in the propositions and the messaging I'm showing to customers. So it's not just a blanket approach. If it's a fresh customer who's just been on the site for the first time, then I'll have a different tactic to somebody who comes 3 times a week, for example. And being very clever and intelligent about that, I think is a really good way to be successful in this world.
Thanks, Rupert. Yeah, same question to Ashley, but if we've missed anything else, anything you think of in terms of particular sort of tactics?
Yeah, I mean, they covered all the key points. Something that I want to remind everyone in the audience is that if you're a publisher, you own the main interaction and you are the one driving everything moving forward. So be it a cookie banner that lets you get consent if you're too scared to dive into the first party data, PII world, that's fine. Get started somewhere. If you want to dive into first party, a lot of people are doing. We have successful stories right here with the panelists. You can definitely do that. But when you're working towards it, I am pretty sure that if you'll sit down with your internal teams, there's some sort of PII you already have. So try and analyze if there is something that pre-exists and you can leverage it as your starting ground. If not, analyze with your legal team and marketing teams and everyone as to what would be the best one. Like mentioned, email has always been there and has been one of the best and first touch points to get started. Use that, kickstart your process and see how you are able to understand your users better and move your experiences from there. But it's a great time to get started before Google deprecates everything by the end of this year. Strategize, rinse and repeat, and I wish everyone all success in that.
Brilliant. You've jumped onto that final soundbite one as well. So thanks for that, Ashley. Joe, yeah. So I mean, I guess same thing to you. Any sort of like particular tactics that you found have worked well, or particular things that have worked well in terms of getting like a big spike in sort of registrations, or getting people to give their information?
I think we've been quite blown away by the positive response we've had from just simply asking our readers, quality journalism, here are some relevant benefits for you. Could you register in order to read our content? It's as simple as that. And we were really surprised with just how many people have engaged with that positively. And I'd also say, put your customer first. What is it that really adds value to them? And that is the same whether you're collecting data, whether you're asking for consent for use of their data in advertising, so on the consent management platforms. If you look at the percentage of readers who interact with a CMP and just click accept, they're doing that because they trust you to look after their data and to act responsibly. That's a huge amount of people just going, I'm interested in how people use my data, how companies use my data, but I don't want to go into the weeds of it. Who in their right mind, not in this industry, would really want to know that unless they're a real privacy advocate. So just make it as simple as possible. Think about the customer, and I think everything would then flow from there. And the other thing I would add in terms of what does work, you need commitment, buy-in internally to make any first-party registration strategy work. And unless you've got that buy-in from your chief exec, from the board, from the editor and the newsroom, in our case, it's really difficult to get going. So you do need to do that internal job as well as think about the customer externally.
Great. Well, hopefully there are lots of CEOs on this watching this webinar on demand who will be so blown away by it that they're all going to run out now and get a really good first-party data strategy or completely buy into it. But yeah, I hope they do. I just worry that how you get all the sort of data-y people to do it, because that must be a whole nother thing. But we'll leave it there. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground and learnt a lot. Great. I'd like to thank all our panelists, absolute troopers. Thank you. Thank you for being so generous with your time and with your expertise. And if hopefully lots of people watch this on demand, share it with their friends, and we'll be promoting it on PressGazette as well as the other webinars that we've got coming up. Next one is on Wednesday, 27th April, which is about website personalization, and the panelists there will include Gordon Edel, who's the co-founder and chief revenue officer of Sophie.io, which is a very interesting sort of AI piece of technology, and Edward Russell, who's got an illustrious career and he's now head of digital at the Times. So we've got 3 more webinars coming up this year. We've got a big full-day conference in September, Future Media Technology, and we've got the Future Media Awards in the evening after that event. So lots coming up, but we'll say goodbye to now, and thanks very much indeed to everyone who's watching and everyone who's joined me on the panel. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
guys.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Okay, well done.